appreciate it. Thank you, really. Thank you. We're going to start with Kapitel Tes Zayin. Michdam LeDavid Shamreni El Ki Chasisi Vach Amart Ladinoi Adinoi Oto Tevasi Baal Olecha Likdoishim Asher Ba'oretz Hema Vadiri Kol Chefzi Vam Yirbu Atzvoisam Acher Moharu Bal Asich Niskei Amidam Uval Esta Eshvoisam Al Sefasoi Adonai Mnos Chelki V'choisi Ata Toimich Gairoli Chavolim Naflu Li Bani Imim Af Nachalos Shofar Oloi Avorech Es Adonai Asher Yotzani Af Leilos Yisuni Chil Yoisoi Shivisi Adonai L'negdi Samid Kimi Mini Bal Emoid Lochein Samach Libi Vayogel Kivoidi Af Bisari Yishkoin Lovetach Ki loy sazoy b'nafshi lishoel, loy sitein chasid chal yiray shochas. Toidieni oirachayim, soivas semochois esponecho, ni'imois b'mincha netzach. B'shist Marinu, Harav Rav Tauber, Shlita.
Came to be Hesped, give the last COVID, Chaya Bas Yitzchak Moshe. The famous story with the Klein Chaya Bas. Klein Chaya Bas decided one day he doesn't want to waste time taking kvittlich. But the Rebbe happened to be a Shundig Hesped. So I said, Rebbe, who should we go to a kvittel? So he said, you go to shul and you see a person has a number on himself and he's putting on tefillin, that's the person you should give a kvittel to. Anyone who survived the Holocaust and stayed frum, he said you could give the kvittel, he could daven for you. You know, this is from the last people who survived the Holocaust, and the stayed frum is unbelievable. I want to say a small story. One of my daughters came to visit many years ago. So I went to a park, and this daughter happened to be a friendly girl, and there was a couple walking with a dog. She says, hello, good morning. Starts a conversation, and I realize from his talk that I had a Yiddish accent. So I said, Yiddish, my father had Yiddish. And where he came to eat, I asked him, where does he come? I come from Ehel. Ehel was a Eid Ember Yisrael. There you go. Before we go on, he started crying. We were both shaken up. He said he was the only survivor from his family. No one, no cousins, no brothers, no sisters, no first cousin, no one. His family survived, and he was 15 years old. He survived, he said, and I came to America, I didn't know what to do, and I didn't live in a Yiddish neighborhood, and it was nothing left Yiddishkeit, he says, from my children. So here you have a lady who came out, no one with her, no cousins, no brothers, no sisters, all alone. It's hard for us to fathom. I'm a child of Holocaust survivor, still my mother, 7 survived. You know, my father, 3 survived. Here, no one survived. What does this mean? It's all alone, the loneliness, this, and still she chose to go to Yiddish Derech. You know, the Chasam says, to say Divrei Torah by Hesped gives the neshama wings to fly up. Always in that Hesped and Chasam. I want to say over to Santa thing this week's Parsha. Avram Avini sends Eliezer Eved Avram to find a wife for Yitzchak. Sends him all the way to Ram Naharaim, and he says, okay. Eliezer says, I'll find a shidduch, but I have a question. What happens if she says she doesn't want to move? I mean, the shidduch is done. So Dad, to find the shidduch, I'm not going to have a problem. You get Asa Gemalim, 10 limousines loaded with gold and silver. You know, as we say, money doesn't talk, it screams. That's not going to be a problem. Maybe that she's not going to want to come. You know what? He says, He yishlach maluchai. Send a malach to help us. Somehow the malach is kikins. What happened after the war, I understood it from my mother, that there was another trauma. Where do you go now? Where do you go live? The Sefer in Torah Moshe says, Amir di Gezach, the Arbul is shyness of a Geila, you know, Etzesi, Gealti, Lekachti, so very nice. Without Havesi, nothing is worth. That means I'm going to take you out of Mitzrayim, Tzalti Eschem, Lekachti Yisachem Lelekim. But if you, where am I going to go? You go in the desert without Havesi. What is it? Without where to go? Surviving the Holocaust wasn't enough. Now where you go, you can. This is how I always think to myself: how to be a malach, how to madrich every person where to go. And here they wound up in Philadelphia, and they raised a family, Yiddish family, left over children, grandchildren. Yiraintlich, go with Derech Hashem. You know, I always say to myself, the Rebbeinu Shloim destroyed us. Somehow the reason that's what he wanted. But he left over ones who are going to rebuild Yiddishkeit. And she could go home to the Rebbeinu Shloim and say, I did my shlichus, I did race, einiglich, and eigentlich Shomer Torah mitzvahs. There's nothing more than the Neshama after surviving such an ordeal. To say this Achsidische word, I was going to say, to add to this, that the Rizal says that Eliezer Eved Avram later was a Gilga of Kulev ben Yefina. That's why he called Avdi Kulev Ekev Riach Acheres Soyboy. When Kulev did his shlichus, Avdi Kulev, what is he called Avdi? So the Rizal, he was a Gilgal from Eliezer. And he came down, and he was Zoicha to unbelievable things, because he did his shlichus for Avram Avinu in an incredible way. So the Medrash says, that where did Kulev go? Rashi brings down the Medrash. Kulev went to Mudas HaMachpelah to daven. So the Zohar Kodesh asked the Kasha, wasn't he frightened? I mean, imagine they were looking for spies all over. They knew that Klein was supposed to come in. And they were, you don't know the language. I always think to myself, there was no ways. I don't know how you found the Mudas HaMachpelah, but somehow he did find Mudas HaMachpelah. He wasn't afraid. He was thinking, he already had a malach in the last Gilgal. He yishlach malucha lefenechu to convince where to go. When Shem sent this, he had this malach with him again to tell them where to go. You know, after the Holocaust, where you lived, what you did, besides an incredible trauma itself. And I always, to add to this, I always tell myself, like, we get a headache, the mortgage is due, this is due. Imagine you're coming to a place where you don't know the language, nothing. It wasn't like, you arrive and you just were traumatized of trauma, went through the camps, went through the death march, which is another incredible thing. And you gotta come over here and start life from scratch. It's incredible. Think about this, it's an incredible thing. The Rishonim ask Kasha, why did Avram not take a wife? He had a bunch of chassidim. A nefesh she'usi b'churam, he had a lot of followers. The Rambam in Hilchos Avodah Zarah says that Avram Avinu had 10,000 followers. Thousands of followers. I guarantee you, some of chassidim, besides Eliezer, he had followers from all over. So everyone, busy with this kasha they bring from the Chedusha Saran, that the Midas Toivis, when Kanani, there wasn't, he knew that his family had good Midas. I never understood it well, because Basil wanted to kill him. Now she brings down, but I saw Amiri the Geteretz, with the Oitzim Mefarshat on Chemish, he brings from Kadmoin another interessante Teretz. He says that the Banishtam told Avram Avini that 400 years should be in Gudas. When did this 400 years start? Rashi says from Yitzchak, you make a chesh from Yitzchak was born, the Rashi till Yitzias Mitzrayim was 400 years. So if he would have taken a wife from the Canaanim, then it wouldn't be a Gatus. It will be, the Gula started. The Medrash is Mavur, and Zohar even more Mavur, that they were racist, the Canaanim and Mitzrayim. If you imagine, Avram is living 70 years in Canaan, and he says, Ger v'toishev emucham. They didn't accept me. I have to beg to bury my wife. You know, this itself was started gulas. So didn't want to take a wife from here, then the gulas wouldn't start. They'd take a wife from over there. They won't feel, you know, as growing up, I always remember growing as a young child, I felt we didn't belong here. It took me till as I got an adult. We were children of Holocaust survivors, even though I grew up in Williamsburg. So I always said there was 3 languages spoken in Williamsburg: Yiddish, Hungarian, and Puerto Rican. No other language. He says, and a few people spoke English. Still, I remember growing up, you felt, imagine this, a lady coming out from a trauma of trauma and still raising a family and still having, this is unbelievable. They should help. So she's on a Melitza Yosha for the whole family.
I'd like to ask Reverend Chaknik to say a few words.
Last week's parsha says by Avram, by his death, it's Yimei Shnei Chayesar, of the days of the years of his life. We can say that about Mrs. Klein, Allah Shalom. Her age wasn't real either. She was a Holocaust survivor and lost, as Rabbi Tauber said, lost all of her family and went through 3 concentration camps, and miraculously, with the chesed of Hashem, survived. The days of the Holocaust are like years. So she lived to 98, but it's really a lot more than that. We had a big schus. She used to come to the Jewish Learning Exchange many times to daven. And I would say when she was there that our tefillos go to the highest place. For those of you who were from back east, it was easy pass. Went straight to Shemayim because the tefillah of a Holocaust survivor. Laser graciously called us last week to let us know that things weren't looking good and if we'd like to come to visit. And Baruch Hashem, we did come. She was very happy to see us, and her reaction was, oh, she's seeing my wife and I. She says, Get Shabbos. She was thinking it was Shabbos. She gave us brachas. It was very special. She looked very regal. She had been not well, but she looked very regal. She was born in Bichov, Czechoslovakia, and it was an idyllic life, like Parshas Bereshis. They felt they were in Gan Eden. The family lived there for 200 years. But then Noach came, and the destruction of the world took place. And following that was Lech Lecha. She miraculously survived. She had to travel, go to a new country, a new place, start fresh. And it was Vayera with the Nisyonos, the tests of life and time. But she passed those tests beautifully. She hosted people, she helped organizations, she volunteered, and she never had any expectations of the good things that happened to her. And the good thing her husband all of a sudden gave her, and she had an ayin tova, a good eye to everybody. She used to give brachas to people, and she had emunah pshuta, simple faith, and always seeing the good and smiling and even joking, and always ask Hashem to bring Mashiach. She loved the famous song from the Kal of Rebbe Zatzal, Sola Kol Chashmar. I had a neighbor once who was Hungarian and used to sing it, and I heard it on Sukkot. I came to him, I didn't know I know Hungarian. He said, you know Hungarian? Yeah, I know. Yibona HaMikdash, Itzi Yointa Ma'ale. The part about the Beis HaMikdash, that part I knew. But that was her life. She talked about living, Mashiach should come, that the Geula should come. Even when she was in pain, she tried to smile, she accepted the pain, and had a gevura, strength, good midas and patience. And it's interesting, because the second pshat, I think, that Rashi brings about at the beginning of Chaya Sarah is kulam l'taiva. All the 127 years that Sarah lived were all good. All good. She had been childless for many years. She was had to move. There was a hunger. She was kidnapped. But kulam l'taiva. And Mrs. Klein was the same way. Kulam l'taiva. They were all good. And unfortunately, she was nifta on Lech Parshas Chaya Sarah. Her name is Chaya, and her mother's name was Sarah. And what's left after that is Taldos, the offspring. And beautiful Kanara, beautiful family, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. How special her daughter-in-law was to take her into the house and treat her so beautifully and with such love and care. And she says it so nicely. She says, it was a schus for me to have. I learned from her. Her one granddaughter was also her best friend. So lessons for us. First of all, from her family, they should live her legacy. And for us, to be a yid with dignity, with pride in who we are. To have an ayin toiva, have a good eye in somebody else, or somebody else has a good thing. Don't be jealous, but be happy for them. To be happy and daven for others, give brachas to others, and daven for Mashiach. She should be a Meilitz Yoshe for the family, for Klal Yisrael, and with her strength, go up in Shemayim to knock on the Kisei HaKavod, and say, Rebbeinu Shalom, it's time for the Gula. Bilam Bavos Lenetzach, Malch Hashem, L'kim Dima Me'al Kalponim, Hashem, wipe away all the tears of Klal Yisrael.
Ask my Avi Meiri to come say a few words.
Well, as was pointed out before, it really is, the era is finishing off. My mother is one of the last few who Holocaust survivors, concentration camp survivors. So I'm going to start with a little background of what her world was like, and how it affected us. You know, like the fact that we had somebody who grew up before the war, such a different world, and even though she was a young girl, and to see that it was still in her upbringing, and it made her just totally like a very different person than somebody, you know, who grew up in our era. Her background shows my mother, Sham, was born in Bitchkiv, which is then Carpathian Mountains, Czechoslovakia, third of 6 girls. She had very loving and caring parents. Her father was a real sweetheart. He would take, they were all girls, so in the house, sometimes you need help in the house cleaning or whatever. So he would help in the house, but after you pulled down the shades, because it wasn't a thing then. He makes sure that when they go to school, sometimes at the end of the week there wasn't really enough. They didn't have what to send them, a lunch. So they would make sure to bake what they call flumpletzel, or he would walk over the distance to school to give the kids here's either a nickel or something to buy something, or bring them a lunch where they are. Mother was also very, very devoted, and with kids, her kids should be happy, balanced, and have a good time. My mother always speak about what an idyllic childhood she had. She was just, well cared for. Her father was a businessman. He'd go with the bicycle to different places. That was how he got around. So her maternal grandparents were in Teich, another town. So when he went, he would always take a kid with him. We went to business, and occasionally take them to go with their grandparents, spend a few days, and bring them back. So she had a warm and surrounded by family. When she was 14 years old, the war had started, of course, earlier, but in Hungary was a separate country. The Nazis didn't take over for some years, but still plenty of anti-Semitism. When she was 14, her parents felt she would have a better chance. Apparently, they felt Budapest, a lot of people felt you go there and you'll be better off, be better chance to survive over there. Already other girls had gone there. And some had come, who were from her town, were sent there, and some had come back. It's a big city, and it wasn't always, couldn't always get kosher food or whatever. So they didn't want to, the other girls, they didn't want to be there. They came back. Her mother told her, listen, you're going to go to Budapest. It's wartime. You try to get kosher, but if you can't get kosher food, I don't want you coming home. It's wartime. You eat what you find. But just remember where you came from. When it's over, remember where you came from. And that she took very seriously. That really, if anything, that defined her. She went there, she went to Budapest, she worked it was both like a school, the Jewish community gave her lunch, and it was enough that she had a little lunch, not bag, but like workers go, two levels. So she would take some for lunch, and the leftovers she'd take home with her for dinner. She had school, and then she worked in a salon. In those days, lingerie was all custom made. It wasn't off the rack. So she apprenticed there, and she had to, sometimes they sent her, jobs. She was learning to be seamstress, sent her to deliver the items. So she grew up in the mountains area. She always walked, so they give her a nickel for car fare to go wherever she would go, but she would save that nickel, whatever, and walk miles back and forth in Budapest, and just to save that nickel. If she had to deliver packages, so she would the streetcars there, the trams. She said she would sort of sneak on, and then they have inspect you if you have your ticket or something. She would sort of jump on. She said, look, I figured I needed the nickel more than they did. So she could use it to buy something, from the street vendor or something. But Baruch Hashem, she was able to get kosher food. And in fact, the salon was also with a Shomer Shabbos salon. So she was had a big zchus for even in wartime to have that. She always says, I was a good girl, because wartime things are different. You're not near your parents. Things are like, all not in the right order. So remember, this young girl, people would say, boys would say, come, let's go out. She said, she never said, I never went out with any boys. She's like, I'm not ready to get married. What do they want from me? They're going to pay for my go to the movie and squeeze me? No, I never went out with anybody with that. I took care of myself. I don't need anybody. I take care of myself. So for about 2 years, she was like that. And in fact, what was the knowledge of feeling that Budapest would be better? It was in fact better, because the rest of then Czechoslovakia was taken under part of Hungary, And the countryside, the Germans took over one night, March 19th of 1944, and they arranged to deport, all the countryside outside of Budapest, in a matter of something like 7 weeks. I believe it was 440,000 Yidden were sent to Auschwitz, of which 80% were killed on arrival, gassed on arrival. The other 20%, they sent it to work and it took them a lager. Budapest was taken a lot later. She was deported on October 23rd of 1944. In those days, the railroad tracks were destroyed there, whatever it was. The Germans, whoever was taking them, deporting them, walked them to the border of Germany 2 weeks. 2 weeks to march them to the women from ages 15 to 50. And they slept outside, slept in the fields. It was October. I'm sure it was not, comfortable, wasn't warm. But Baruch Hashem, she was used to it. She said the girls who were from Budapest, who grew up in the warm house, many couldn't make it. They couldn't take it. Some, unfortunately, just ended their lives in that march because it was too difficult going from a comfortable home to being a rough situation. But she was okay. She said, when we stopped at nighttime, I would go around and see my friends and see how you're doing and encourage people and talk to them. She was caring. She wanted to give. That's a big theme in her life, always wanting to give. She told me a story. She took with her, she had a sitter. She had a big sitter. I don't know how big, a big sitter, she says. And they're marching and marching. And the other girl said, what are you doing? You're schlepping this big sitter with you. They made her feel really bad. So I said, what are you taking with you? So she just didn't know what to do. She already sort of gave in and says, okay. So one spot, she couldn't just leave it someplace. She found some inside of some place left in the Bekuvidik spot, a nice, just an honorable spot, not just to throw it out. But she couldn't, she felt bad. They bothered her. What do you need this for? But to her it was important to have taken, but unfortunately she left it. She was, as was mentioned, in 3 concentration camps. Ravensbrück was a women's only camp. From there she went to Turkheim, and then Burgo. Burgo was a sub-camp of Dachau. But first, initially in the camps, she worked in Turkheim. I think already was the war was ending. They didn't feed them. They barely fed them. They don't think they went to work, and then the last camp. Finally, as the Germans were losing the war, they retreated. That's where the death march is coming. They bring it farther and farther into Germany. And finally, in May, they took them, the last from Burgo, in a train. And the Allies, not knowing who's in the train, here's the train down there, they bombed the train. Many girls were killed in the last day. She said, the girl right here in front of her killed, the girl behind her was killed. She went through with a pair of sisters, Seren and Esti. And they were with her, from Budapest through the camps. They managed to stay together, and in that train. So Esti had shrapnel in her. They managed to get the door of the train open, and she schlepped her out. Again, it was apparently it was still a dangerous situation. It sounded like there was still I was told as there's still shooting going on, but she was schlepped out. There were woods nearby. With a spoon, they took out, and she had some shrapnel in her head. They took that out. The spoon took it. They found the spot. They found some cabin, and went there. And the 3 friends. A day or 2 later, the Americans came. They found, and they didn't want to go. They were scared of the Americans, but they found a Yiddish-speaking soldier. He said, "Come." They went. They had what was used to be a nunnery, which under the Germans they made into a military hospital. It's called Saint Attilian. So it's German military hospital. He brought the survivors there. And over there, she had been well, but over there, apparently, she with 3 girls to a bed, she got typhus over there in the Santatillion. And she was sick for months, high fevers, almost died there. And finally, when she recuperated, the girls who had from her area had already gone back to the hometown, and because my mother had been incapacitated for a while, so they came back and says, don't bother going. They imagined that, okay, people were there, go back. Nobody's left. Nobody came home. So from there, she went, of course, there were many people who had no place to go. They went to DP camp, displaced persons camp, Feldafink. Chaplain mentioned the Kleisenberger Rav, so he was famous. He was there in Feldafink for a while before he went someplace south in Kornwald. And apparently, the time she got there, the kosher food was not yet well set up, but she went with a group of girls to have kosher from the beginning. Other girls would say, oh, when I go to America, I'll keep kosher. So no, she took it, what her mother said, remember where you came from. It's over, remember where you came from. She kept kosher from the very beginning. She they had some type of schooling there, and my father Shalom was also in that same camp. It was a Hitler youth camp in the past, so it had big barracks, big dormitories, different, she was a baby, the youngest of the maybe dozen or so ladies there, girls there. So I don't know. People would come over, and they said to my father, oh, "This is a girl you could." It was like your background, and my mother appreciated that my father came from background and was from not always did it stay as after the war with some people, but she still, when he was paying attention to her, she says if he wanted to take her out, he didn't just go take her out. He had if he wanted to go to a movie, he had to invite every single girl to come take the movie. She never went into it until the very late in the game to just a one-on-one date. Finally, my father had an opportunity. He met a cousin who was an eye doctor from Italy, and who was there, and he had a position there. He was also a concentration camp survivor from Auschwitz. And finally, the cousin, who was older than him, said, I'm going back to Italy. Why don't you come with me, and you'll become, learn, you'll be, whatever, something in the eye doctor field in Italy. And they already become close. So she said to my mother, look, why don't we'll get engaged, and I'll go there, and it'll be then we'll get together when I'm a doctor. She said, no. No, that's it. You want to go? I'm not having long-distance boyfriend. Now, do it or not. Okay, so 2 weeks after they were engaged, Lag B'Omer, 1946, they were married. Feldafink had some people who would go do Chubba Kedushin. My mom says, no, I don't want somebody from the camp. I want a real Rav. In München, it was not far, as a big town near them. So the Rav was, maybe people know, Rabbi Lazarovsky, who was years later came to America. In fact, he eventually came to America and lived in Philadelphia, and I knew him. So he was a Rav before the war, a Chashav Rav. He was the head of whatever, the rabbinic organization here in the United States. But so he married them. And that she was, young and not really knowledgeable. They went. She didn't know, and that she hadn't really gone to the mikveh properly. So the Rav said, "Okay, I'm going to marry you, Lag B'Omer, but you have to go to the mikveh, and you have to stay apart." So that night, my father went back to the men, and they're making fun of him. We just got married. Where are you? Look, I lived so long without a woman. I could live another day. So the first day they were kept apart. Was to start off the right way, in a kosher way, to start their marriage. So they were married. My oldest brother, Maris Chaim Moshe, was born in Germany. They came to the United States in 1948, and my second brother, Pesach Simcha, Steve, was born there, and I was youngest in Philadelphia. Some things that my mother had done had her qualities. You know, when people, as was said before me, a lot of people just didn't come through with their frumkeit. It just went through so much. Philadelphia is full of Polish Yidden who were under the Nazis much longer. And my mother had rachmanis on them. She would say, look, they suffered so many more years. And as much as they were surrounded by that, and they weren't so, it took them a while to sort of get back in the right way. You know, but always they were very Yiddish, and they were among those who, the few who really came back to being properly keeping Shabbos and all that. Everyone else, I grew up, the whole crowd with all Holocaust survivors, and mostly not really, you know, keeping the full of what they grew up with. But she would encourage, the sweetness of Yiddishkeit. We lived far away from, not in the Jewish community. My father had a store in South Philly, not near, you know, where most people lived. But for Hanukkah and Purim, when some people, I don't want to invite people for Shabbos because they're going to drive. When they could, you know, when it's holidays, they can drive. So I invited people to have a party, have something at our house. When later we were in a Jewish area, northeast Philadelphia, there were here and there were tshuva, people who became a little more frum, more interested. Should invite them for Shabbos. Even before people come to her for years, invite the rabbi, the chazan, and you know, she was always very proud of that. She was like hosting, cooking, baking, hosting. That was, you know, what she enjoyed. She was part of what they call the hospitality committee. Somebody moved of the shul. She and her friends, somebody new to the community. We welcomed them into the community. So she was like a beacon of light to these people, to her friends. Chizik for them and for the people who were just learning to be frum. She was very samech b'chalka, as is pointed out. You know, after a while, my father went from being working in a shoe factory to having a business and in real estate. So eventually he became financially secure. But whatever she had or didn't have, didn't complain and didn't ask. My father treated her very nicely. He had a first cousin who was a diamond cutter, so he would bring her beautiful things, which she enjoyed. But nothing that she didn't need it. She didn't ask for it, but she's proud of it. She liked it. As is pointed out, she was regal. She wouldn't go out. She was earrings, lipstick on, looking nice. Just to look nice. It just is like menschlich, to be at the dignity she had. She didn't talk. It was such a sweet demeanor that she wouldn't talk about people. My father always says, "Your mother's so sweet." He would say to me, "You have her midas. You don't talk lashon hara. You don't talk about people, and you know nothing." She would not say anything bad about anybody. I remember one instance also. Just one of the other friends, the European friends, had a kid. I guess they were married, divorced, but he didn't get a get. I don't think it's because of get refusal, he just didn't get it. So my mother said, look, you know what? I'll tell you what, you give a get, I'll make you a party, and give a get, I'll make you a party. You know, and that's because it's a nice way, you don't have pressuring, but yeah, it's like your party. It's one of the things to be done right in a sweet way. She was so well balanced. Initially, when she was maybe in her 20s, the very beginning of America, she was, I guess, became overweight. Then she said, no, after my second brother was born, I think it was then that she said, you know, I don't need this. And not any, like now there are millions of diets, she just ate less. She always ate slowly. She said, I never had stomach problems because I eat slowly. And she just simply ate less, you know, just until she was a good way. She wasn't thin, she wasn't bad, she was Just a good way, and she maintained that weight. And that was just something, is a balance she had. She said that a doctor told, she didn't take vitamins. The doctor said, if you eat balanced, you don't need to take vitamins. She never took vitamins, but she was healthy. In her 50s, she started having high blood pressure. The doctor said, okay, I'm going to put you medicine. She said, no way. She didn't like medicine. She started working an hour every day, an hour a day. Put her tennis shoes on and walk and walk and walk. Even after she came here, my father was in the hospital in Rosh Hashanah, 3-day holidays, 3-day Rosh Hashanah, and Cedar Sinai. And so I was with him in the hospital. So my dear wife and my mom, it was her 83rd birthday, walked to Cedars and back that day, you know. So she was ready, in good shape. She's, just to say, right, she's proud of it. When my father was in the hospital, when they moved here, Kanapa 16 years ago, December 16 years ago. He was here with us in the house for 15 months, and he was in the hospital for 15 months before his patira. Every single day, 6 days a week, besides Shabbos and Yom Tov, she would spend the day with him. The ladies in Birka Chelim were nice enough, she would get rides there and back, and she spent the day. I was talking with somebody who became very close with her, who used to give her rides, and she said, she changed my life. I said, how did you change your life? So I was visiting, you know, she would bring chalas, as a teenager, bring chalas to the people in the hospital in Cedar Sinai. And I was by the door, and I saw your mother. My father then was already, had a tracheostomy. He was in bed, you know, and maybe wasn't so with it. But I saw her, and she, with his mouth, needed attention. She would with such love, clean out his mouth, this is a swab and all that. And he said, I saw the love that was there, and I hadn't seen such a married couple to see such a care and love. It really, that just put something into me. It changed my life, she said. And people saw that in them. I said, Mom, in the beginning, before my dad was sick, they used to go to a senior center to adult care. You know, so I said, Mom, maybe you should go there, exercise, and then you'll go to Dad. I said, no, I belong here. This is where I am. You know, so when they were cleaning my father, he was busy with them, so she would walk around Cedars to get her walks in. You know, but she'd spend all day with him, probably 10 to 5, something like that every day with him, for 15 months. When that's just the dedication. And she's balanced. When the time came after his patira, maybe I asked her a week or two later. It's like, Mom, you look like you're holding up pretty well. She says, look, I was prepared for this 15 months ago. So she's had that wherever Branchton gives her, whatever situation you're in, she accepted. She accepted, and that's it's such a quality that's from that I'm sure she got from her parents or her whole generation. People who I was lucky to have. She was the only survivor. My father was one of 7, and his eldest brother survived. He helped my father. They came to the United States from Eretz Israel. They came, my uncle, my late uncle, in 1959 or 60. And they used to visit, live in Williamsburg. They used to visit very frequently, bring them, and my mother would always buy things for them, buy toys, especially after the next day. I have 5 first cousins that after they got married, had kids. Then she would go, and when she saw things on sale, go shopping. She would, my cousins later, some lived in Lakewood. She would go to Lakewood. The trunk would be full of toys. She told the people in the toy store, "See, I'm buying for a school." So they're very I have to mock her tov. They stayed very in contact with my mother, my cousins, and they always, they love them. They love mutual love. She went to every simcha. Simcha, it's like my parents were very involved. The family is so important to them. That even though they lived, with the simchas either in Lakewood or in New York, they went to everyone. Sometimes my late uncle didn't go to family simcha. My parents were there. That's how they were. So she would, whenever you talk with her, people tell me that you make them feel like $1 million. She would make people feel like $1 million. If you look nice, she says, "Oh, I love your outfits. You're just so beautiful." Yes, she's so lovely. Yes, exactly as she was, and just such positive energy. It's and such appreciation. She always tells us how much she appreciates to be here with us, and especially in the end, the last year when she became more and more dependent. Till she was 95, she was perfect. Then slowly, a decline, and more went to her last year, and it was hard for her. She did not like to be needing things, and sometimes she really didn't like it, but when he did it, but she said thank you. Even when it was difficult, always said thank you. And it's so many times, people tell me, other people said that she always talks about you and Tova and how well she's treated here. That's all she would say, how happy she was to be here. So that appreciation that's part of her counting her blessings. Whatever she had, little or a lot, she just appreciated. Her thing was how could I give? That was what motivated her appreciation to Bnei Shalom, to give brachas to people, love for Klal Yisrael, for Eretz Yisrael. She would raise money, for Eretz Yisrael. It's that was look, that's it. That's a lesson. That's something that Baruch Hashem. Like I said, I'm proud, very proud to have. I have a mother like this and parents like this. And I see Baruch Hashem midas that's going on in the following generations, and it's very special. My late father, he would always say, when he moved here, Los Angeles, so beautiful, such a nice community. You were so warm and welcoming. And I could say that certainly for my mother. The community was so from the Bikur Cholim who drove her here and there, the people came who would visit and encourage her. And I'll just mention because it's a cute story. And among his people, I won't mention a bunch of names, but particularly Dr. Geft. I hope he's watching. They had a very close relationship. She always, as was pointed out, she said, "Look, show my muscles." So she would show. Look at my muscles. She would exercise. So later the doctor said, the other people tell me, look at my muscles, but your mother's the only lady that says that. He would say, okay, go. Squeeze my hand. Give her a finger. Squeeze my hand. She said, I'm going to hurt you. He said, go anyway. So she would squeeze, and he said, ow! He would do. So, Makar type to him, I'll just say names. I'm afraid not to leave off people. If you're not mentioned, please don't take it. But from Mrs. Brief, the Brief family, Noah and Chavi Trainer and Rabbi Chapnik, always have been involved. Myra, who's been our house with us for 22 years, and took her like her own mother or grandmother, and took such good care of her. I have no words for it. Like really, such love that made her life so much better. I really appreciate that. And Dan Jacobson and his family, who was really and say that was in his words he said, "You're my girlfriend." You know what I mean? He would say, he's a make her feel good. And my cousins, and I'd like to point out my children by name, also Daniel and Ora, for the respect and love that you showed and the nachas you got from your family. Very much appreciated. Esther Rachel Sarah, my daughter, we'll explain to Esther later, always had, this is her, she said that you're my best friend. She would bring simcha, dance for her, sing for her, hold her hand and just bring her uplift, bring her joy. Shaul, who was my two sons in Eretz Yisrael. Shaul is what first, he just treasured her. When she already wasn't so well, he flew in at a moment's notice from Eretz Yisrael, and Baruch Hashem was with her the last day she was at home, and the first few days she was in the hospital, and his family, and my youngest Yosef, who was a constant source of nachas for her. She loved talking with him, and when he was away, he's been in Eretz Yisrael for a few years. She missed him and always would send him brachas. And for the last, I really can't even put into words. I don't have the proper words to say for my dear wife Tova. I don't know what to say. My mother lived, I think, longer and happier, really because of her. She organized everything constantly. It was more the lion's share of the involvement was on my wife. And she would encourage me to be like, I could be like a little morose or down. She would, no, you have to make her up. And she would also sing and dance for and bring her up. And it's a day in and day out after working a full-time job, plus all the different things. I tell you the different things that my wife was involved with. But never forgetting her and putting her, making her life just a beautiful life for just about 16 years. I'll ask on behalf of the family of my brothers who hopefully watch them, who aren't here, Morris and Steve and their families, and Tava and I and our family. Mom, I ask you, Mechila, if we didn't do enough, or if we did that wasn't right, please be the Yosher for us, and please my chos of anything we didn't do. Bila Hashem, Bila Hashem, Mocha Hashem Lakim Dima Me'al Kopanu. Daniel, my son will say a few words now.
Just share a few thoughts. It's like a piton to him that I say every day. I was thinking about, and it always bothered me for a while. We say Yimei Shnei Seinu V'Hem Shivim Shana, V'Migvorei Shmeinim Shana. It's always hit me why our days are 70 years. A person's days are 70 years, and Bigvurais, if he's strong, it's 80 years. So not a long riches, but just a thought that I had is 7 is B'derech HaTeva, and 8 is always L'malam min HaTeva. And one day when I was saying the kapitel, it hit me that Bigvurais is Gematria 613, the way it's spelled in the Tehillim. So I was thinking that Bigvurais doesn't limit. The question I always had was, why are you limiting to 80 years? We see kind of hard. She lived 98 or plus. Why are we limiting it to 80 years? So I think the Vart really is, it's not limiting it to 80 years. It's already Lamala. When a person connects to Torah mitzvahs, they connect to Taryag, that's already brings them Lamala. Now, my grandmother, she didn't really have didn't really understand all the Torah mitzvahs, but whatever she did do, she did wholeheartedly. She was like, it was mentioned before, her positivity was unmatched. was thinking a lot about it, and I think that part of that came from she never complained about anything. She never expected anything. I don't know, maybe it was before the Holocaust or afterwards. I don't know exactly when that needed to happen, but it was anything you did for her. You smiled at her, you brought her nothing. You didn't even have to do anything. It was always a thank you. You came to see her. Whether you came to see her or you came to do something else, you were there. It was always appreciated, every little detail. And I think the few things that she did, she would sing and say brachas, whatever she knew. She didn't necessarily know the Torah aspect of it, but I think the strong foundation that she had in her home, that's what she focused on 100%. Definitely there's, her Shmiras HaLashon was unmatched. Anytime somebody would say, we'd always as kids, things were, let's say, said so nicely about this person, that person, she steered it, made sure it stayed positive, just pashut. She always was thinking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, always had emunah pshuta, like was said. And, as a kid, I had I don't know if it was an interesting relationship. We came, she was a grandparent, and she was always very, like we said, regal, but there was always a little bit of a barrier as a child, and I didn't really understand why. And as I got older, I realized I don't know if everybody copes differently, but I think anytime you brought up the Holocaust, she always steered the direction someplace else. My grandfather was very happy to share every little detail of his story, but my grandmother everything was rose-colored glasses. She was fine, and a lot of the information we learned was from other people and from her video. But I think that there was a certain barrier that was up when she was younger that she didn't want to connect so much because she lost so much. But as she got older, that barrier got less and less, and we saw that once I had children and everything like that, it was just, she couldn't keep that barrier up. It broke through, and she was just full of love, and whatever was held back when she was younger just burst through the seams. I think she always shared that love for Klal Yisrael. I remember one story when my grandparents were here, I think visiting. There was an event, I think it was Sukkot time, and boomers it was all rented out and all Yidden, and they were able to see just the whole place was Jewish, and I remember my grandparents just starting crying, and my grandmother was not a cry. My grandfather was a cry, and my grandmother would make fun of the people that cried, but even she had a little tears to see, like, this is what he tried to take from us, and this is what we're rebuilding. So it's a schus for us to live that legacy. And just, again, one other thought that I want to share was that she, besides not complaining, she was just very strong. She's very strong, and she just kept going no matter what. I was thinking about, like my father mentioned, her walking. She, as a child in the Carpathian Mountains, she would go hiking and walking all the time. And she always says that was one of the things that, made her strong, helped her survive, was all these other people that walked a little bit, she was able to walk miles and miles and miles. She was used to it. So it definitely gave her that ability to survive the war. And she always felt, I think, part of it, like Father mentioned, some of the kids that were born into, their parents were taking care of them. And even 14, I think, like, I have boys that are older than my grandmother was going through the war. And even at such a young age, she was able to be so independent. And I think a part of it afterwards was like zero expectations. So whatever I have, I'm going to just use what I have. So I think two things, just really that Hakaras HaTov she always felt for everybody and everything, and really for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. She really had a lot of Hakaras HaTov HaKadosh Baruch Hu for every bracha that she had. And just her words were so guarded and only positive that it was definitely a source of bracha. I mean, we can go through the Chavetz Chaim, all the different brachas that it brings, and definitely protects and has a shmira. And we should take these lessons, and we should continue for us, and she should be a Meilat Yesher for our whole family and for all of Klal Yisrael. And the one thing she would always really say was she really davened for Shalom al Yisrael. Shalom in Israel, she would say. She wanted Shalom for all Klal Yisrael, and Mashiach should come. I'm just going to read a short something that unfortunately my brother couldn't be here, but he sent something on his behalf. Do you want to read it? I want to start by saying that this is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, and at the same time, it feels like a privilege. Even though I can't be there in person today, I'm very grateful that my brother is reading these words for me. This is my brother Shaul, yeah. It means a lot to be able to share just a little bit about my bubby, who meant so much to me and to all of us. This is my small way of saying thank you for a life that was so full of courage, love, and quiet strength. Bubby was born in a little town near Siget in 1927. She grew up in a home that was modest on the outside, but so rich on the inside. She was one of 6 sisters, a house full of girls and laughter, at a time that in a society where the norm was that children should be seen but not heard, her parents were different. Their home was warm, there was love, there was room for the girls to be themselves. She used to talk about her father, a strong man who would come home and bring little gifts for his little girls. They lived in a simple wooden home that did not even have a bathroom, but what they did have was a yard full of fruits and vegetables, animals that they raised themselves, and a house full of fun and life. Those early years stayed with her forever. Even after everything that had happened later, when she spoke about her childhood, you could still hear the warmth. When she was just 16, she was sent to Budapest to learn a trade and became a seamstress. It was practical, a way to help support herself, but it also fit her. She was always someone who knew how to take what life gave her and work with it, stitch by stitch, to create something new. Then the war came to Hungary, and everything changed. Before she was taken, her mother told her something that I think captures both the depth of their faith and the reality that they were facing. She told her, do whatever you must to survive. If that means not eating kosher, if that means being Mechal Shabbos, you do it. Live, survive, and when the war is over, do not forget who you are. Come back. In the camps, Bubby experienced horror that most of us cannot truly grasp. She went through a death march. She lived in conditions that were beyond inhumane. At the beginning, they would serve a watery broth with little bits of pig meat in it. She refused to eat it. Even in that place, even with that hunger, she felt strong enough to first say no. But as time went on, she grew weaker and weaker, and she finally reached a point where she felt she could not go on without it anymore. She decided that she would eat it, that she would do what her mother had said and survive and then come back. And then at that exactly that time, the camp stopped putting pig into the stew, and in the end, she never did eat anything treif. Bubby was the sole survivor of her entire family. All those sisters, those parents who loved them so much. The warm wooden house with the garden and the animals, all of it was destroyed, and yet she came out of that hell not as a broken person, but as someone who chose to build. After the war, she met my Zadie, and together they came to America to start a new life. They did not arrive with much. Like so many survivors, they had to figure out how to live in a new place, a new language, a new world, while carrying so much pain inside. For a few years, they had a grocery store, and they opened it on Shabbos because they needed to make ends meet. It was not easy to build a new life from nothing. But at a certain point, my bubby put her foot down. She said, this is not who we are. We need to go back to being fully observant on Shabbos. And from then on, they never opened the store on Shabbos again. That was my bubby. Practical, yes, understanding what it meant to survive, but also anchored, deeply connected to her roots and to her values, to her Yiddishkeit. She never forgot where she came from or what her mother had told her. For me, though she was not just a survivor or a symbol of strength, she was my bubby. I do not remember a single time in my life when I walked into a room and she saw me and her face did not light up. Every time without fail, her whole face would beam. She would look at me like I was the best thing that ever happened to her and tell me how much she loved me. She had this way of making me feel like I was completely special, like there was nothing in the world I could not do. She filled me with confidence. When I was with her, I felt like in her eyes, I was pure goodness. And that feeling did something very deep inside me. It made me want to be the person she saw, to prove her right, to make her proud. That is one of the greatest gifts to me. That quiet, steady belief in me, no big speeches, no drama, just this constant, strong message, you are good, you are capable, I love you. And it was not just me, she showed all of us how much she loved us. Each grandchild, each family member felt the warmth, the pride, the love radiating from her. She did not need fancy words, her presence said it all. When I think about her life as a whole, I feel incredibly lucky to have had her as my bubby. She showed us something very rare. She showed us that a person can live through hell, lose an entire family, see the worst of humanity, and still not be broken. She showed us that you can keep moving forward, keep helping the people around you, keep building. She did not just survive, she built, she grew, she raised a family, she brought kindness into the world, she became a builder of Am Yisrael. All of us here are part of that building, every child, grandchild, and great-grandchild, every Shabbos table, every mitzvah done in her merit. Every time we choose to keep going, to stay connected to our roots, to support one another, we are continuing the story that she started when she walked out of the camps and chose life. Bubby, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your strength. Thank you for your warmth and your love. Thank you for making me feel like I could do anything. Thank you for showing us what it means not just to live, but to rebuild. We will miss your smile. We will miss the way your face lit up when we walked into the room. We will miss your voice telling us how much you love us. We carry you with us in the way that you treat our families, in the way we hold on to our values, in the way we choose, even in difficult times, to keep going and to build. May your memory be a blessing, and may we live in a way that continues the light you brought into this world. Viva la Netzach.
Ay mulay rachamim shachayim bamroimim Hamze minichun achoyna al kalafay ashkina b'malois kedoshim b'tahidiyim k'zayrekiya Bazilis nishmas Chaya ben Yitzchak Moshe shal cholay lama Ba'avi shinav litzadok b'adas garas nishmosa B'ganay daday minichosa L'chayin balarachmim yasireh b'sayis knufot loylamim v'yitzrayir b'tzar achayim es nishmosa Adonai hinachlosa v'saniach al mishkova b'sholayim v'naymer amen.
The Kfura is scheduled for Tuesday around 4 p.m. in Beit Shemesh Eretz Chaim Cemetery. Shiva will be at 445 North Mansfield. The times will be announced. At this point, we're going to be Malavad Aron. Whoever wants to help.